Traveling around the world has been my number one passion since a young age because not only is it exciting, it's very educational. I've already learned so much from the 10 states and 2 countries I have visited. My first ever trip was in 2012 to Disney in Orlando, Florida. I will never forget the excitement I felt driving to the airport. It felt surreal landing in Florida with my family. My family and I had the best time ever on this 9-day trip. Leaving this trip, I knew I wanted to travel a ton in the future. My favorite trip has to be my vacation to the Outer Banks, North Carolina. This was my first time traveling with my extended side of the family. Unfortunately, my family and I all live in different states, so we don't see each other very often. That's what made this trip so unforgettable. We had a great time catching up and bonding after a long time apart. My most impactful trip was when I traveled to the Dominican Republic. During this trip was when I first started to realize how educational and eye-opening traveling can be. My family and I did a city tour on this trip, and they spoke about all the history about the city, and they showed us a few symbolic murals. During the tour, you can see many homeless people on the streets, which made me take a step back and realize this isn't just a beautiful place people come to travel to. People live here and they are struggling deeply. The furthest trip I ever went on was when I went to Italy. The long plane ride itself was exhausting, especially on top of being jet lagged. But I was too excited to rest. I just wanted to start exploring. On top of my own exploring, I also attended multiple tours. I learned so much about the culture during these tours. I found it so fascinating. I also learned about the delicious food in Italy. I got to even watch how pasta is freshly made. I branched out and tried so many new foods in Italy, and they were the best meals I've ever had. Overall, these traveling experiences and other trips I've been on completely shaped who I am as a person. The education I gained from these trips about history, cultures, geographic regions, and so much more made me realize the diversity within the world is so beautiful and every place has something to offer. But I also realized these places can be scary. I learned to be extremely grateful for the life I live and the experiences I endure. Nothing should ever be taken for granted. I look back to my first trip, and during that time I thought traveling was just about fancy vacations and nice things. After all my experience, I know that traveling in the world has so much more to offer. I hope to continue my traveling journey and to learn so much more throughout it.